Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Like JC mentioned, my name is Ambyr Mokiao-Lee, and I am the new statewide outreach coordinator for the Rapid Ohia Death project. Today I'll be talking about Rapid Ohia Death, a slow fire in Hawaii's native forest. Here is an incomplete list of all of those who are currently working with Rapid Ohia Death research, scientific communications team, our outreach. We have three of our main scientists, Dr. J.B. Friday out of CTAHR at the University of Hawaii. We have Dr. Lisa Keith out of the USDA ARS lab in Hilo, and then Dr. Flint Hughes of the Forest Service out in Hilo as well. But just looking at a list of some of the people, I think as of now we have, 200-ish people working on this project. We have people everywhere from the Forest Service to Department of Agriculture to DOFA, USGS, all of the HISC, the University of Hawaii, CGAP, TNC, and many, many more. We even have visiting researchers from the mainland. Just to make a note that really I want to thank everyone that's part of this list, even if they're listed or not listed, just because there's actually only two of us, myself and our other outreach specialist in the Big Island, Corey Yanger, that are full-time Rapid Ohia Death people. The rest of these people, this is just part of their duties in addition to many more things that they all do, so everyone takes all of their time out of their busy schedules to help out with this research and with this team. So I just want to thank everyone involved. So I'm sure a lot of you already know or have heard at least about what Rapid Ohia Death is, but if you have not, Rapid Ohia Death is a fungal disease, and it is caused by the Ceratocystis pathogen. What this disease does is essentially gets into the sapwood of the tree, and it kind of like chokes off the water supply, water and nutrient supply going up to its crown of the tree. And what happens, you have healthy trees that appear green and then start turning to yellow and then to brown, and this happens within a matter of days to a couple of weeks. And that's how it actually got its name, Rapid Ohia Death, because it's such a rapid death from when once the symptoms, the outward symptoms begin to show. In a lot of these stands, just to mention also, if you don't know, that Rapid Ohia Death currently is only happening or located on the island of Hawaii, on the Big Island. So we do not have it across the sea. Hopefully we can use it that way, but for now it's on one island. In some of these stands, we see trees that are of small stature trees all the way to large stature mature trees that are affected. So this disease doesn't necessarily target one type of tree. It is occurring across the landscape. Here are some aerial photographs of the same location, and the GPS location is indicated by the red dot on the photos. And it shows what the forest used to look like down in the lower Puna region. And down in the lower Puna region, I'll talk about in a little while, but that is where the epicenter of the outbreak began. And so I think Dr. J.B. Fridays and others began to notice or were getting phone calls and concerns from the community back in 2010 on some of these trees on people's properties beginning to show disease, and they couldn't figure out what it was for a while. And by the time 2012 came around, they noticed, like in the bottom picture that you see here, they noticed the stand of the eye. And so by the time they actually began to sample, and it's just a few years, but they actually had to identify the disease. This is a picture of a native forest using many different trees in addition to the Ohia trees. The forest, like in this picture was taken back in 2005. You can see it's an intact native lowland forest. And this is that same location today. You can see pretty much at least a 95% mortality rate in this particular stand. This is close to the epicenter of where it all began. You can see that there are a few trees that are still standing that have not succumbed to rapid Ohia death. So as of now, there's a lot of research going into the genetics of these living trees to see if they're genetically resistant to this. Here's another aerial photograph of what Lower Puna looks like currently. And you see the trees that were affected by rapid Ohia death in this particular area. But what I wanted to point out is that rapid Ohia death in this region, killing off all of our, or not all, but a good percentage of the Ohia in this area. And what's going to come, what's going to grow into this forest is actually a lot of invasive species. So you can see by the dark green foliage that we have a lot of strawberry guava, and there's other types of invasives like Tibutina, et cetera, that's going to come into this region and change the forest from a native forest into an invasive forest. Here's another aerial photograph of another region up in the upper Wailuku River above Hilo that was hit pretty hard as well. But in this forest, I just wanted to point out that this is pretty much a native forest, and you can see that the understory in this forest is primarily a lot of ferns, so you have a lot of uluhe. This area, you will actually see a lot of koa and hopulu in this region as well. Just to say that not all of our forests will turn into invasive forests. It just depends on the forest. So here is an artist rendering map that Dr. Friday created. And this is just showing the spread of the disease from 2013 to currently. You see indicated by the super light yellow circles that it began in like the Leilani Estates area down in Lower Puna. By 2014, it moved throughout the region and started creeping up towards Hilo. And then by 2015, you really see that it moved all the way up into Hilo, up to the upper Wailuku area, down into Ka'u, and then all the way up to the Kona coast on the west side of the island. By 2016, it moved a little further in the Kona region, and it ended up in, it's currently at Kolokomalka. And then we actually, in 2016, got our first case of a rapid Ohia death tree on the coast. Turn to this year, by the dark maroon-colored circles, you see that it moved further up the Hamakua coast, and it's currently as far as Kuhayao at the 34-mile marker of Hamakua. Here is an aerial survey map. This map is the older version, which was done in 2016, but the latest map looks a little more red in color, but it says the same information practically. But this map was created by, or completed by Division of Forestry and Wildlife, for the Forest Service and Big Island Species Committee. They spent many hours traveling the whole island. And the biggest thing that we know from these maps is that as of last year in 2016, we had roughly about 47,000 acres affected on the island. So this year, in 2017, we have an actual 50% increase of land to now about 75,000 acres. So in just 1 year, we've increased affected areas by 50%, which is a significant amount. Here are some photos of some of the earlier days of field sampling done by many of our scientists and students. They were trying to figure out what was going on with these trees. And so obviously there is a lot going on with this picture, but it just shows how their process and what they did to cut the tree up in different regions of the trees, and how the fungus was spreading throughout the tree. One of the biggest things that they found is that in these trees, they noticed that there's a lot of radial staining within the sapwoods, and you can actually see it from the bottom. In the bottom two pictures, you can see in the sapwood area you have the dark black, almost like a starburst pattern in the trees, and that's indicative of the spores, the fungal spores within the wood. So this is where the story gets a little more complicated, to say the least. So we have Dr. Lisa Keith's lab out of the USDA ARS lab in Hilo, and they began some analysis of the Ceratocystis strain, and they took the DNA and they mapped it against a worldwide database of DNA, and what they found was that what they found is that there is our Ceratocystis that's occurring in our ohia trees here in Hawaii is not found anywhere else. So it wasn't found in any other regions. So essentially what they're saying is that this is not only new to science, but this is also new to Hawaii. Another thing that was interesting that they found is that we do not only have Ceratocystis. We actually have two different species of Ceratocystis, and I'll talk about it in a little more detail later. But as of now, some of our team is working on currently getting it described and renamed. Since we do not have a name for them yet, we are referring to them as species A and species B. Species A looks like it was derived from Latin America region, while species B came from the other side of the world, coming from Asia. There are a couple of theories into how it got here to Hawaii, or how it came to be, but the main one is what they think is that it came in on a plant host that wasn't showing symptoms of the disease. So that's how they think it got here. But further research is going into it just to make sure that is the case. So how does the pathogen move? We know that people use the wood, or use ohia wood, for various things like firewood and posts for homes or construction, or floorboards and things like that. So further testing in some of these wood piles that they found in people's yards or being sold to woodworkers is that they actually found positive results of rapid ohia death within some of these logs. So they know that these logs were being sent off island to other places, or being used in woodworking areas, for woodworking shops, and then also as firewood to different regions of the island. So they know that it was actually spreading. This was one of the methods of spread. Another mechanism of spread that they found out through further research is that it was coming from, or we haven't spreading due to ambrosia beetles. So in the bottom left-hand corner, you see a picture of a dime, and you see the little beetle within the yellow circle, and it's extremely tiny, and what they are is they're considered a type of boring beetle. Not boring like you want to yawn, but boring like it's gonna go into the woods. So what it does is you see a photo of a little gallery that it creates. It digs and it bores into the wood, and it creates a little tunnel or a gallery, and then they kick out all this fine dust called frass. The frass is evident in the picture on the top right-hand corner. You can see these fine little particles. And what happens when it gets kicked out is that the spore, the fungal spores within the wood actually sticks to the frass, and it gets transferred by the wind. Not all of it gets transferred by the wind. Some of it does end up falling into the soil and infecting the soil. They found it in various areas within the soil, and then people use, forest users go into the forest and it gets trapped into their shoes, or people drive off-road and it gets stuck into their vehicles, and so we know it is just a continuous spread that way. So we have our entomology team doing further research into this natural pathway, meaning natural by the beetles. So we have Dr. Curtis Ewing and his team in Hilo. They are trapping beetles not only in the forest by these traps you can see in that top left-hand picture, but they also take pieces of the wood and take it back to the lab and tent it in a net and essentially wait for all the beetles to come out so they can test them. What they found is that the beetles that are boring into this wood is pretty much all ambrosia beetles. After further molecular testing, they found out that 10% of the beetles tested positive for rapid Ohia death. So we know that it's not only infected frass, but it's also the beetles themselves that are actually transferring it from tree to tree as they move through the forest. So one of the next questions that this team is working on is that they want to know if these beetles, they know that the beetles are attracted to dead wood and they're attracted to the scent in the dead, decaying wood. So that's how they get to bore into those trees. But what they want to also find out is that are these beetles also able to infect healthy Ohia?
I like the blood.
So we have another couple of researchers that are looking at, especially Dr. Carter Atkinson, looking at whether or not, well, we know that it's spreading on the wind, but what they want to find out is how far it's spreading.
Just duplicate that.
Oh. Does someone have a question?
Please make sure to mute your phones. Don't worry, Mike. I'll mute you or you.
Okay, sorry. So what this team is doing is they're measuring, things like wind flow. They have frass traps out, similar to like pollen traps, and they're trying to see how far it moves on the wind. Here is a pretty good photo of some wounding activity that happens on these trees. And our scientists know after testing hundreds and hundreds and thousands of trees that rapid Ohia death enters the tree through a wound. So there has to be some sort of opening within the tree for the fungus to get into. So wounds can occur everything from, ungulates to people clearing lots and using construction tools and things like that. So, there's various ways that a wound can occur on the tree, but we just want to make a mention of it. And I'll talk a little more about it later. So this slide is about some of the latest preliminary research that came from, her name is Jesse Jeswick, and what she did back in January of this year, 2017, is she inoculated some healthy trees with both species A as well as species B. And what she found was that in species A, in just 3 months' time, so she came back in April to sample what they inoculated in January, and she found that with the species A, is that it actually traveled from the infection site at breast height. It traveled all the way down to the soil, and it traveled all the way up to the branches of the tree. So this one is definitely a more virulent, more rapid response, this particular species, I mean. And she also, when she cut into the woods, she definitely found it in all of those areas as well. So it wasn't only from, from the outside that they could see the actual staining, but when they cut it apart and they cut it into smaller sections, they got to take a look at it in greater detail. Species B, on the other hand, that just moved, I want to say, more than 12 inches from the infection site, both above and below it. So, I mean, it wasn't a significant movement compared to species A. So what she, although this is only preliminary results, what she concludes that species A is what she would consider a wilt disease, and species B is what she would consider a canker disease. So, this may have implications for scientists, but as of now, for the public, especially coming from the outreach side of it, we're just keeping it simple at rapid Ohia death. We're not going to go into details with the public about the differences in the species, but this is just pretty much for everyone else to know that there actually is two, and they both end in mortality of the trees, but they move differently and they spread differently. So this may have implications for us and learning more about the disease. Not all Ohia that are dying is actually succumbing to ROD. There are many different types of diseases that affect Ohia. Back in the 70s and 80s, we had a natural dieback of these trees. We have down currently in the Ka'u region, which is the southern area of the Big Island. We have trees succumbing to drought and volcanic emissions. Down in Kona, JB, them are finding this foliar disease that's attacking some of the Ohias on that side. There's also a canker disease as well, and they find this all over the place. This isn't only just in one region. And then this slide is a new slide that JB and others came up, I think, last month in May of 2017, and there is an outbreak of, areas that people wasn't sure if it was rapid Ohia death or not, but it was pretty much a lot of defoliation in the forest. And after testing it and taking a look at different aspects of the trees, they can conclude that they think it's myrtle rust that's actually killing these trees on Oahu.
And we saw similar areas on Molokai.
On Molokai?
With even bigger extent than.
So how much area do you think that covers?
I don't know.
Oahu didn't map it that way.
On Oahu or Molokai?
On Oahu. On Oahu.
We don't have the number.
Oh, okay.
Rachel will be to work on an estimate.
So some of the management strategies that we are talking to the public about is ways to help prevent the spread of it. Obviously, we can't prevent the beetles from doing their job, but we can actually try to prevent the humans from spreading it even further. And one of our main 5 things to do list that we give to people is that we're asking people not to move Ohia wood. Like I mentioned earlier, how some of these piles that they're finding are testing positive for rapid Ohia death, and they know that some the hard-shelled part of the fungus is actually can live up in the wood for about a year. So even if you think it's from a good region, you really don't know until there's further testing. And then also not to move plants, Ohia plants. We cannot test the Ohio plants, just because if we do, we would have to cut it apart and then you will have no plant left. So we're just asking just to be safe not to move Ohio plants from, you know, from one region to the other. JB and others also have been working with the County of Hawaii, their Greenwaste stations, both in Kona and in Hilo. We have a lot of big signs, first of all, stating people are not allowed to bring Ohia trees or logs or cuttings into the Greenwaste area, but the Hilo station is currently looking into doing composting. And so what they're doing is they're taking the mulch from these areas and they're actually composting it, and that pile or those piles actually heat up to about 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is an acceptable level of being able to kill the Ceratocystis or the fungus, as well as other things like coastal frogs and fire ants and other types of invasive species. But we're still looking into that further because as of now we're not accepting Ohia. But
so it's only the inside, no?
Well, what they do is they turn the piles of, like over and over and over. You know, they spread it out, turn it and turn it and turn it until supposedly all of the regions get heated to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's something that they're looking into that maybe in the future with further testing and things like that, they could possibly use it as a means for homeowners, you know, to get rid of their wood and stuff like that. But as of now, you know, no Ohia is allowed in these piles. Another management strategy that we're telling people, obviously, is to not wound Ohias because that's how the disease will actually spread to some of our healthy trees. And like you see, we have things like climbing spikes from arborists or tree trimming businesses and heavy equipment and livestock and things like that that are creating these wounds. Like I mentioned, we know that humans are spreading it, so, you know, if you do go into the forest, please clean, you know, all your mud and debris off of your gear and your boots, and especially for your clothing, wash it in hot water and detergent. That will help to get it out of your clothing. Vehicles, we're asking people to pressure wash your vehicles, especially the tires and the undercarriage, and then, you know, as well as the floor mats within your vehicles. A lot of people forget the floor mats. They might wash their vehicles on the outside, but not thinking about the inside. So just be wary of that. You do use tools, or this is also good for your shoes. Please decontaminate them. The decontaminant of choice is just 70% rubbing alcohol that you can buy at any store for, you know, under $2 or so. Give it a spray and a little scrub, and within 15 seconds that will decontaminate whatever you sprayed it on. A lot of homeowners or concerned individuals, I should say, always want to know what to do with infected dead trees. So our team on the Big Island definitely, because they're mapping these areas and they go out and test it, they want to know, you know, where it is, and if it's in a, specifically if it's in a new area that's not found on any of the maps, they definitely need to know where it is. They're recommending to have the trees cut down and bucked up by a certified arborist. You know, tree trimming is very dangerous, and they don't want just anyone trying to take these trees down because some of them are very large. When you do buck them up, pile them in a pile, cover it with a tarp, and that will prevent the beetles from getting into it and creating more frass, which will further spread the disease. Also, if you would like, you can also, you know, burn them in your fireplace. Just don't take them to the other side of the island. We had a lot of people working on this, but we're very fortunate to have the Hawaii Department of Agriculture be proactive about this disease outbreak, and last year in 2016, they created a full quarantine, prohibiting, I should say, prohibiting movement of any Ohia-related things such as plants and flowers, leaves, seeds, stems, wood, logs, mulch, anything like that, prohibited it from being shipped outside of the island of Hawai'i. Some of the woodworking businesses or people making floorboards or posts and things like that, they can apply for a permit to get it shipped off the island by the Department of Agriculture, but Department of Ag will come out and sample it, and if it tests negative for the disease, then they can okay it to be shipped. So I think I just seen in Hardware, Hawaii, that they were selling some floorboards from the Big Island, so I know some are getting through to other islands. For people that want more information or further information, we have a pretty extensive website. The URL is rapidohiadeath.org. Some people prefer Facebook, so we do have daily postings of things on Facebook, such as, I don't know, Ololo No'eau. We feature all the science researchers and people involved and various events and things like that. So if you want to keep up to date, we do have daily postings there. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much for having me, and I will take any questions.